Alright, step 6. For the front legs, I used almost the exact same process I used for creating the back legs, by keeping one set intact while the others I cut into individual pieces and attached them bottom to top with their counterparts. Before attaching the big scaling talons, cut the smaller talons off the bottom ankle pieces where they're growing out of the skin. Then take one of the scaling talon arms and cut off the talon hand and arm socket joint, so you are left with the forearm. Should have a small row of spikes on it. Making sure you cut along the angles of the carapace where the scaling talons join. Then cut off the top of the elbow, the end with the big spike, so as it's flat lengthways, and flatten it down, then attach it to where you cut off the claw from the front leg, then attach the large scything talon to the slanted part of the forearm. Alright, let's see, note, with the front right leg, you may want to cut and angle the ankle outwards slightly. Otherwise, when you attach it to the model, it will be pointing inwards as opposed to pointing down. It has to do with the angles of the left and right knee joint being different. This is best done when all the other legs are attached, so you can get a better idea of how much to reposition the ankle. Alright, that makes sense. Let me give it a shot and I'll be right back. Alright, so I finished step 6, and I apologize I didn't take the time to make a video of all the specific cuts I did. But what I've done is I've got an extra Turvagon leg from a different kit and an extra scything talon from a different kit, and I'll show you those cuts on these. Alright, what I did was I took the leg, and the very first cut I made on the leg was I cut this membrane out, and then I cut the leg at a 45 so that the upper arm and the leg was two different pieces. All right. And then I took the arm and I cut the little ball socket that goes in the torso. I cut that off. And on the other arm that I had, I cut just right before that 45 cut that I made. Just like that. Bam. So that these two can connect like that when I go to install it on the model. I'm not going to glue these together so that when I go to fit the legs, if I need to make any modifications, I can make that modification right here. It'd be easier to do it right here versus down here. Okay. The next thing I did was I took the scything talon and I cut the talon off of the arm. I followed the armor, right, and I cut it at 45. I cut it at a 45, and then on the elbow I followed the armor again and I cut that at a 45. All right, and here's why. On the Turvagon leg, I cut the talon from the leg where the skin meets the talon. I cut it straight across. Alright? And I took the forearm that I cut off the scything talon, where I cut it at the elbow, I lined it up and I glued it straight on there. And it's a perfect fit. And that makes the elbow piece come out like at almost a 45 degree angle, almost. Well, I take it back, almost a 90 degree angle. And then I attach the scything talon to the 45 on the other end of the arm, and that gets the talon pointing down, and that creates that stepped look you see right there. All right. On the leg that I cut here, I glued this on, and then I also cut right here underneath. You see all these little horns? I cut following the carapace right across there at a 45, and that was so that on the other piece, on the upper arm, where I cut the talon off, I could glue it straight on. All right. All in all, it was a fairly easy step. It took a little bit of time to figure it out, figure out what he was talking about. His instructions aren't as detailed, and so you got to kind of try to figure it out. There is a link to his instructions in there, so you can read those. You can look at his pictures. I'm working on it right now. The next step he's got for step 7 goes back to the torso, and if I look, my modeling clay is still not dry yet, so I'm gonna hold off on going back to that. I think the next step should be attaching the legs, and that's what I'm gonna do. I read through his directions, and I think it's kind of assumed that at this point you're attaching the legs. The rest of his directions doesn't mention anything about the legs. So, well, I take that back. Step 9 does. But I'm going to go ahead and skip forward so I can get to the legs. And when I get to the legs, that's when I'm going to start filling these in, and with the green stuff, and start smoothing it out, building it up as well. With that being said, I'm gonna cut it there and get started on the legs. Alright, so I jumped ahead from step 6 all the way up to 9, and 9 was attaching the back legs. Should be fairly straightforward, but the front legs are where things get fun. Now mine, the front legs are attached in the second socket along from the front, with the third higher up socket filled in with green stuff. And they don't fit in the socket so much as they sit against it, but it is sturdy bond. You may have to remove a chunk of the carapace plate that sticks out. Then when that is completed, you should be left with something that looks like that. Alright, so for simplicity's sake, I attached it to this base. He didn't tell me to do that, but I just kind of figured, hey, it'd probably make it easier. And guess what? It did. Alright, so the hard part was getting the legs in there. And the back legs, they do fit kind of somewhat okay. Depending on your angles that you made, is the way that this thing's gonna sit. So, and you're really not gonna know that until you put the leg on. Needless to say, I did a little bit of repositioning. At that point, I kind of figured out how I wanted my thing to sit, my Hierophant to sit, and I decided I would like him to be walking, not 4 legs on the ground, just standing there. I wanted him to be walking. So I attached this temporary base on there. I used another model, and this is just a little bunker that I made a while back. I haven't finished it, but that's just the way it was. And I put it down on the back side of the leg, and before I attached the base, I stood this guy up like that. And then I attached my legs. Now, before I put the base on there, I was actually propping it up with CD cases. Alright. Now, CD cases, they were the right height. I could take some in, I could take some out, and get it to where I wanted it to stand. Midway through attaching the legs on there, I got the back legs on there, and it was sitting up there like that. And then when I went to go put the front legs on there, The front legs I had to reposition as well. Everything on here I had to reposition. So those basic cuts that we did, that just gets you to a general point. From there on, you are basically modifying this at every step of the way. Once I got the back legs on there, I had attached this stand on there. Now this is just a temporary stand, but I attached this stand on there, and that held it up while I was working on the front legs. Now, one thing I noticed on the front legs was it fits in the socket here on the right leg, right? But it was easier to attach this piece to the socket and then make a cut right here. That way I could pivot the arm. And then I could get it to stand. Now my model is standing on these back 3 legs. That's how it looks right there. And that's where it's going to be standing on these back 3 legs. And this front leg is going to be stepping forward as the back leg is stepping forward as well. So these 2 legs are stepping forward. These 2 legs are going back. So to simulate him walking. Now, this leg here is not going to be touching the ground. And what I did here, it sort of fits in the socket. He kind of mentioned that. But I had to shave this little carapace part right there so that I could get my leg to fit in there. And it's just glued to the side. Okay? It's pretty sturdy though. It's not going to come off. I did notice that this is very top heavy. If you look at it. Now, I stuck a dowel in there. A really thin dowel, and it doesn't support the weight. But it holds it up so that I can work on it. With that being said, I went back and I added the milliput, the green stuff, the milliput. It's real hard to add that while it's assembled. Make sure you have a sculpting tool. Some places I got it on there a little thick. Some places is pretty thin, like right here. I built out the legs. Right down in here. Right down in here. I reinforced the back leg right here. I plugged in all those holes that you were seeing. Those are all gone. Now, from there, that's almost it. It's almost done. We're going to go back to step 7 though, and follow the rest of his stuff. Step 7 was back to the torso. Take 2 of the small scything talon ankles that should be left over from making the front legs, the ones with more ankle attached, not the ones that were cut off to make way for step 6. But then these should fit in the main gap in the front of the torso. I placed them in the gap on either side so as they were pointing back along the rib. These were basically there to help reduce the amount of green stuff that was needed. Then taking the 2 small back vents you cut off earlier, place these in the 2 small half circle inlets of the main carapace plate at the front. Now I've already done that part. See, I stuck those in there. And I've already green stuffed it in. It looks good. So that's pretty much that. This is what he's talking about. These are off the Turvagon legs where I cut it off at the ankle. And he's talking about inserting it like right in here. Which I guess I could do that. And then on the other side as well. Alright, well, other than that, the only thing we got left is, let's see, step 8. Step 8, the green stuff work is really down to your own technique, but for those with little or no experience, I find putting a drop of water on your finger and tool stop it from sticking to you. That's true. That really does work. And I used the pointy end of my green stuff tool to get it into the small gaps and hard to reach places, while using my thumbs and fingers to smooth it over to a certain part, like areas or big holes. Again, you may use the fingers as a guideline, the pictures as a guideline, but even I'm a novice. And what he's saying is true. Keep water by yourself. Water's your friend. Stick your finger in there just like that, and you can smooth this stuff out. And when you use your tool, dip your tool in there and it smooths it out pretty good. Alright, so let's see. Step 7 was adding these 2 scaling talons. Step 8 was putting on the green stuff, which we've already done. Step 9 was attaching the legs, which we've already done. And from there it says, from here on out, it's pretty much open to the interpretation and really easy. All I did for the biocannons was cut out a couple of rupture cannon arms off at the elbows and splice them onto Tervigon crushing claw arms. And as for the head, it's a tyrannofex head with a few Tervigon mandibles attached to it. There may be a few small gaps by the front legs that need to be filled in with green stuff. And then there are all various little claws and spikes that you can attach to their respective sockets. But that's it. It's done. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and attach these. Attach the arms, the rupture cannon arms, and attach the head. And I'll be back.